Welcome to People Talking Sitting Down.
What is it that makes somebody want to pursue boxing in the legitimate way that you did?
When I was around, I think I was 14 years old. And at the time, I saw it as almost like a means to an end. I had taken like a bunch of shit from different guys and just hit a breaking point one day where I was like, I'm tired of this. Like, all right, if I learn how to fight and have this, like no one will want to fuck with me. You know, I just really like the sport. It's cool. And for me, it was solely about like, I want to be able to stick it to these kids and have them like fear me.
All right, well, what up, Hugh?
What's up, Chris?
I'm going to bring the energy after this coffee.
Let's go.
Much needed. Well, thank you so much for coming down. I'd like to give a quick introduction to everybody who doesn't know you. But Hugh and I met at one of my best friends, Aiden's, shout out Aiden, his wedding. And that was the first time I got to meet you, but I heard a lot. I heard a lot of good things and then a lot of other things. But really excited to dive into everything today. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about specifically was your recent, what do you even want to call it? You came out of retirement to do some amateur boxing, and then did you expect to go as far as you went?
I mean, that was like the plan from the start when I started the training for it, like a year prior. It was like the whole focus was like going to the finals, like winning the whole thing. So in a way, yes, but like at the same time, no. Like the way the whole thing played out kind of went just perfectly to plan, with the exception to the finals itself.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, that was the intention from the start to like go the whole way.
Yeah. And so and what we're talking about is what's the right term for it now? The golden gloves?
Yeah, it's a little confusing. So the tournament the official name for it now is called the Ringmasters Tournament. It was previously called the Daily News New York Golden Gloves. The Daily News newspaper was like a sponsor for the whole tournament. And I think they changed the name back in like 2015 over there were legal issues with the Daily News. Like it was around money, like funding. They wanted more money. And so the Daily News revoked the sponsorship and they took away the rights to use the name Golden Gloves. It's the same tournament. Like if you see on like the flyer for like the Ringmasters, it's the National Golden Glove Qualifier, because whoever wins, like if you win, you then advance to the national level for the Golden Gloves. But yeah, back in the day, like it was a much bigger deal when the Daily News was the sponsor. Like all the fighters were in the paper, and it was sick too because if you had won, they would give you these like very iconic golden gloves like on a chain.
Really? And
they revoked that too. They're like, you can't use the name golden, you can't use gloves, you can't give the chain out anymore. What? And so
what'd the winner get?
Now you get these, I mean, they give you a medal now, which is honestly still pretty cool. Like I got a medal even for coming in second, but it's it's like a WBC, World Boxing Council medal. And the thing, it's heavy as hell too.
Yeah.
Like it's got some weight to it. So I have it in my apartment. And I was like, all right, this is also cool.
That's sweet. It was one of those things where it was like, I felt like I was on the journey with you. Like
yeah.
With your entire crew of like hooligans, honestly, it's the best word for them. Like every time that you'd have a match coming up and posting up on Instagram, it was exciting to check out the results. And I told you I like wanted to get up there on that Thursday, but didn't work out. But I guess to backtrack to how we got here and how you got here, like when it comes to boxing, where did it start? Like one of the questions that popped in my head when I was thinking about this was like, when's the first time that you got like punched in the face? Like what is it that makes somebody want to pursue boxing in the legitimate way that you did?
Yeah. So I first got into boxing or just like fighting when I was around, I think I was 14 years old. And at the time I saw it as almost like a means to an end. And what I mean by that is from the ages of like 7 to 14, 15, I had taken like a bunch of shit from different guys, like older kids, either in my town or I went to an all boy high school for 2 years. So there as well. And just hit a breaking point one day where I was like, I'm tired of this. Like I felt like I wasn't respected. And I just rationalized in my head as like, all right, if I learn how to fight and have this, like no one will want to fuck with me.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can say whatever.
But yeah, that was it. Like the reason I got into it was just because I wanted to kind of like put an end to all that shit. I know a lot of guys will get into it because they're like, oh, I want to be a world champion one day, or, you know, I just really like the sport. It's cool. And for me, it was solely about like, I want to be able to stick it to these kids and have them like fear me. That's what it started with. Like, I wanted them to fear me, which sounds like silly to say now.
So were you like picked on?
Yes, like pretty badly. And I mean, it's funny because like growing up in elementary school, like I was kind of like a bully myself in a sense. I was, you know, very much so like respected within my grade, and was kind of like a bossy pants, if you will.
Yeah.
It was like my way or the highway, and I was like one of like the cool kids.
Yeah.
You know how you like when you're younger, you like the groups are kind of already established, but it was always by like who I was getting all this, you know, trouble from. It was the kids a couple grades above. They were in the same grade as my sister. And where it first started was in travel hockey. So I grew up in Pelham, in a town in Westchester County, and in our town, like hockey's the big sport. So everyone would start playing travel hockey like when you're 7, 8 years old. And because I'm a 95 birth year, I'm old for my grade. And the way they would separate the teams is the 95s would go with the 94s, and the 96s, who all my friends, they were all 96s, would go with the 97s. So I was on, you know, the team with the older kids. And, you know, at the time I'm like 8, 9 years old, and these kids are in middle school. And like I said, my sister was in their grade. And I would just get it from these kids all the time, like about my sister, and just like stuff about me too. And I should say, like, it's not like I was just this innocent kid either, you know, like just like in the corner with my book, like, oh, let's go pick on him. I definitely kind of built up this like reputation for myself of being kind of an annoying little pestering kid, because that's who I was. Like, for whatever reason, when I was younger, I found it funny just to like edge on older kids just for amusement for my friends. And so I'd built up this reputation of like that annoying little kid. But specifically in travel hockey, it was just, I would get it every practice from these kids. They were 2 years older, and it was like 6 of them too, like on the team, who were also the best players. And, you know, you're young, and it was just hard. Like I couldn't like really stand up for myself at that point.
I was gonna say, I assume you're on the smaller side if you're.
Yeah, I was like this chubby little kid, and it was just like the fact that they were all the best players too. You know, like the captains, even at that age, they had captains. But yeah, I would like leave practice all the time, just like crying, going home. And it was messed up too, because like in middle school, I feel like people go through a lot of problems and whatnot, like growing pains. And my sister had like her own insecurities and issues, as like all people do in middle school. And they would make fun of her to me about it, you know, and just like, I was like, this is like double levels of fucked up right here. Like, what's going on? And yeah, it was just all the time. And I mean, it got physical too. Like I was thinking about this recently. One time before a game, we're like warming up, and like both teams were on the other side, like both teams are on their sides of the ice, just like shooting on net, getting warmed up before the game starts. And one of the kids is like, hey, Hugh, go one-on-one with me real quick. I'm just like thinking like, oh, like maybe, you know, maybe this is my time. Like, like maybe this is like, you know, this is the end of it. He thinks I'm good. And I take like 3 strides at this kid, and he just puts me on my ass. It's just like decks me.
Damn.
And he goes, thanks, Hugh, and just skates away. I was like, what the fuck?
That's twisted.
It was twisted now, but there was another time that actually like really got to me. It was after practice, and this kid had said something to me, And I remember like almost speaking back to him, like telling him to like fuck off or something. And he slapped me across the face and just held this like stare. Like he slapped me and I was just rattled. And then he just held this stare looking at me for a few seconds. And it was weird. It was really weird. And I just felt like paralyzed almost. And like after he like, you know, went away, I just immediately packed up all my equipment, darted out of the locker room, and I was walking towards my dad, and he's like, I see my dad. He goes, "Hey, Houston Magooster, like how was practice?" My dad used to call me Houston Magooster and still does sometimes, but I just like walked past him, like beelined out to the parking lot and immediately broke into tears. For whatever reason, like in that moment, just feeling so like helpless and paralyzed really got to me. And that went on like travel hockey until I was like, I want to say like 12 or 13, because eventually all these guys went into high school and they started playing varsity hockey. And even as freshmen, like this just goes to show how good they were. They all made the team as freshmen and were like starting players. So that was like the first area where I was just like kind of dealing with getting shit. But then in 9th grade, so my freshman and sophomore year, I went to an all-boys school before going to the public school in my town in Pelham. And I don't know if you know anything about, did you go to all school or have friends like
that went to all boys schools?
Yeah.
A lot of my Malvern.
So like, I don't know if you've heard kind of like what the culture is like there, but it's a very like dog eat dog environment, especially if your school is known for athletics. Like all the guys there are good athletes, and it's just this very competitive environment, which is fun in a way. Like that's what makes it kind of like a fun experience. But there was one kid in the grade above me who was just like this notorious asshole. He was like known throughout the county because like our school, you have kids from all different towns going to it, and we would hang out with the all girls school, like our sister school, who also had girls from all different towns. And this kid made a name for himself for just being like, just like a notorious, mean and just like crazy person. But he gave me a lot of trouble my freshman year. And like, I wasn't the only one. This kid had a thing for just like bullying people, like kids older than him, like kids in his own grade, kids younger. And it didn't help that he was like, you know, at this time he's a sophomore, but he was one of those kids who was just fully developed. So he's like a grown ass man, just absolutely ripped and big too. And he was also like a ladies' man. He was just like, there were all these stories about him, like every weekend just making out with like 5 girls, you know, and it's like back then that's like, oh my God.
Yeah. He's the king.
Yeah. But he was just such an ass. But he just like made my life hell throughout freshman year. And then once lacrosse season started, he was also the star lacrosse player. So once lacrosse season started, I ended up making the JV team as a freshman, and I wasn't good at lacrosse at all. I think I was just athletic and like wasn't afraid to like get physical. But there was a freshman team where all my friends were on, and for whatever reason they were like, all right, you're going to be on the JV team. So it's kind of like travel hockey all over again, where I don't have any of my boys and I'm here with the older kids. But it wasn't like a pack of older kids that were giving me shit. It was just this kid. And I remember one day, like after practice, I just had it, you know, and I should mention the thing that he would always make fun of me about, it wasn't my sister. So like travel hockey, that was about my sister. This kid would always get on me. He would call me fat and ugly because I was this like prepubescent little kid. I didn't like go through puberty until, you know, going into junior year. I was a late bloomer. So he would always get on me about that and, you know, just do other things like in practice, like shoot balls at me and stuff. And I never really knew what to do because, like I said, he was a grown man. Yeah. And so one day I went home, I was just so upset, and I asked my dad to take me to Modell's to get a heavy bag. And we went and got it, went home that night, went down to my basement and just like drilled the thing up in the ceiling, and I printed out a picture of this kid's face from Facebook. I had a like clear wrapping tape and just like wrapped it around the bag so it wouldn't tear, and just beat the shit out of this thing every day for a couple of weeks. Yeah. And you know, like I said, I did that for a couple of weeks, and I was thinking, okay, like this is somewhat helping the problem after practice, but it's not like completely getting rid of the problem. And it was at that point I started looking into like actually learning like how to fight. And so I had found this class on this like Muay Thai academy. So I first got started in Muay Thai, not boxing. And so my dad was driving me to this Muay Thai academy in the Bronx every day after school and after lacrosse practice. It is pretty funny because the first night we went there, like my dad, I'll just preface this. My dad's not into fighting at all. He doesn't like it. And he's very much so a lover and doesn't watch it or, you know, any of that. We show up to this place in like the hood of the Bronx. But it's like a legit Muay Thai academy, and it's small. And when you walk in, the actual training mat is like 10 feet in front of the door, and the check-in desk is right to the left. But at the time when we walked in that night, there were two guys on the mat. It was just them two going at it. Like they were sparring. And I guess like looking back, they're probably high-level amateurs, but these guys were kicking the shit out of each other. And to this day, I haven't seen fighting like that live, like in person. But I'm talking like kicks to the head, flying knees, elbows. And my dad sees it and looks at me and goes, are you sure you want to do this?
Are we in the right place?
He was like, are you sure you want to get into this? And I was just so pumped up. I was like, yes. Like, yeah, I want to do this. Like, it just fired me up. And so I was going there for a couple months and just learning the very basics of fighting. And it was building my confidence a little bit, just like, you know, just going every night and getting exposure to actual like fighting and learning it, you know, because it's you have to learn how to do it. It's not just like you go in and start throwing punches and whatnot. And I had come up with this like plan to fight the kid that was bullying me on the last day of lacrosse practice, like on our last practice, like locker boxing. You know, like locker boxing when you have your helmet and gloves on.
Pretty dangerous.
Yes. And it's really stupid to do with like specifically lacrosse, because you're wearing a hard ass helmet and you're using these tiny little gloves that aren't meant to punch. Like the whole thing with a boxing glove is it gives you support around your wrist.
Yeah. And those helmets are not made to take impact of a punch. Like on the outer shells, like, they can take a hit.
The whole thing was just a stupid idea. But so anyways, like on the last practice, I started getting into it with this kid. Like at the end of the practice, I was like, okay, like today's the day. And I'd also told my mom that day, I was like, can you pick me up 15 minutes early? Because I knew that this was going to happen after practice. And I just wanted to dart out of there, like for whatever, like either outcome. I wanted just like an escape to get out and go. And so, we start getting into it after practice, and there's kind of like a bunch of kids around us. And I just said to him, I was like, you know, I'll kick the shit out of you. He was like, what'd you say to me? I was like, yeah, I'll kick the shit out of you. And I just have like adrenaline just jacked up. Like, oh my God, it's about to happen. Also, like on this day, the freshman lacrosse team was also practicing. So they were in the locker room afterwards, like all my friends. And we all head up there. Me and this kid get on the helmet and gloves. And there's just like a swarm around us. We're in this like tiny corner of the locker room. There's like no room to move. And kids are just like on top of lockers, getting a view. Like everyone has their Blackberries out.
Damn, dude, what a throwback!
Right? Yeah.
There's no Snapchat back then.
No Snapchat. Yeah, just like Brick Breaker on the Blackberry. No, but the kid who was like the mediator, like probably some like 10th grade, like junior year kid, he's just like, all right, like fight. And as soon as he said that, I just unleashed just like a barrage of punches on this kid. Just like fury. I hated this kid so much because he had put me through hell. And this kid who I'm fighting, kid who had just like given me so much shit all year long, didn't land a single punch. And like I said, I let off like probably like 15 punches, just like wailing on this kid. And by the end of it, I thought like one of my wrists was like sprained or fractured. It was from hitting the helmet. And I ended up getting pulled off the kid. He is on the floor at this point, and his helmet is just like up like half of his face. His like chin strap is covering his eyes. I just like messed him up. And everyone's just going ballistic because this kid, like I said, he was just like the biggest asshole. He bullied everyone. And it was the first time someone really took a stand to him. And he's just on the floor. People are going nuts. It's all on video. And my friends are there too. Like my boys that like were freshmen. They're all just like, let's fucking go, all that. And I'm standing over him and it's just like grand triumphant moment. And I took off my helmet so he could see my face. And I take a step towards him. So I'm standing over him while he's still on the ground and looked at him. And I just said, stop fucking with me. And then like darted it out of the locker and was like, I got to get out of here right now. And my mom's outside waiting for me because she had come to get me. I told her to get me 15 minutes early. So she was waiting. And I get in the car. She's like, hey, honey, how was practice? I was like, it was good. It was good.
Damn. So what happened after that?
It was honestly kind of awkward with the kid because.
So no trouble. Nobody.
He left me alone. Yeah. It was like, I would see him in like, it was awkward in that I would see him in the hallways and stuff and just like, I couldn't really, I didn't feel comfortable like leaning into the like, yo, what's up? Like I just gave it to you. And so it was a very like awkward dynamic in a sense. Like he stopped giving me trouble, but when I would see him, I just wouldn't talk to him.
Yeah.
And it's funny because a couple of years later, I was working as a lifeguard at this country club and he was working as a beach boy. And it was as if nothing ever happened. It was just completely normal. And that's partly due to just growing up and maturing. Yeah. He was still like, even then, like an asshole, but he wasn't messing with me. And by that time too, I had like developed more. I had gone through puberty. And so, I'm not just like this little chubby kid.
Yeah. Dude, cause I'm like shocked that's, I did not expect that to be like the start of anything.
What do you mean?
Just cause I mean, how old are you?
I'm 20. I'm 28.
So I meet you at, whatever, 20, 26, 27 years old. Like, I don't know how to say this without just being direct, but like you come across like as an alpha of like that you're confident in yourself. You're comfortable with yourself. You don't come off like you've had a past or like a history of being bullied at all. And that's like, again, why I love having these conversations and just asking people like, what's up with your life? How'd you get to be the way like you don't know?
Yeah.
And it's kind of shocking because I always expected you, like I know you as the boxer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so I just figured that you were always like that. And to hear that it came from that kind of place. Cause I don't know. That's the crazy part. Like, were you still picking on kids at any point during that?
No, that was mainly just in elementary school, like first to fifth grade. It was really like first to fourth grade. I wasn't really picking on kids either. I was just more of like a boss, like it was like my way or the highway type thing. And I remember just meeting with counselors in elementary school growing up. They're like, all right, kids look up to you. Like you can't like boss people around. Like you have to be a leader. That was the thing I always heard in elementary school is be a leader, like you have to carry yourself as a leader. But no, that was just in elementary school.
Damn. I can't believe that. Because it always makes me think it's like what, again, not what happened to somebody, but how'd they get the way that they are. And to think that like that's what a lot of kids even right now are processing. Like there's kids in elementary schools all over the country that are getting picked on. That are the seeds of what you went through are happening to them.
Yeah, it's got to be so much worse now. Like, cause I'm sure every kid in like elementary school has an Instagram. Yeah. And just when you take it to social media, I feel like it's just.
Yeah. And now it's just stuff's filmed. Like you do stuff because, and that's what and I've talked about this several times on here, but like I was that kid in middle school who was picking on kids. And like, it's, when you think about it now, it's like, as you were telling that entire story, I was like, I wonder what that kid was going through. Yeah. Did you ever think about that? Like
the kid who was like in high school, my freshman year.
Yeah. Yeah. Like maybe now.
Yeah. I've wondered that, like what drove him just to act. And the funny thing is he has a younger brother who's in my grade the nicest kid ever. Like the complete opposite, just an absolute sweetheart of a person. He was so cool. Just so polar opposite to his brother. I think that this kid had just kind of like a Napoleon complex because he was kind of short.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that factored into it. But like I said, like at the time he was just yoked out of his mind. Like I was like, damn, that is.
Yeah. That's the thing was like when you're talking about the ice hockey, when you split kids up in that way, you have kids that are 2 full years apart. And at that age, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's, you could have, I mean, I know it from not only playing lacrosse, but also refereeing lacrosse. It's like, you could have a U13 team where all the kids are supposed to be 12 and under, but you know, the cutoff is in September or something like that. So you can have a kid who's 13, almost 14, playing against a kid who's like 10, you know, or whatever it may be, or you know, 10, 11. But the size difference is huge. You could have kids that are 6 foot and then kids that are like, you know, tiny. But when did the spark happen of the boxing thing? So like when you talked about, I'm standing over this kid.
Yeah.
And looking at like, what does that moment remind you of? What is it like? Do you remember any of the feelings or like what the car ride home was?
I remember in that moment, it was just so exhilarating and kind of, it felt like this like grand release of like, it was all like the previous years kind of built into that point. It felt like in a sense of like finally taking a stand, but my actual, like, I guess boxing, like I don't know how to say this, like the moment when I realized like I want to box, like take it more seriously, that wasn't for a little bit afterwards. So I stayed in that Muay Thai like academy for probably 6 months. And I eventually just got really tired of getting kicked like in the shins specifically. It hurts so bad. And I was thinking like, okay, I like the whole training thing. It's cool. Like it gave me confidence. Like that was just obviously the first like moment where I was like, wow, this is cool. Like, you know, I can solve this big problem with this. But I like the actual like fighting portion, but I just didn't like getting kicked. And so at that point I started going to another gym in the Bronx when I could finally drive on my own. It's called Morris Park Boxing Club. And I started just drive myself after high school. And at this point too, I was also back at the high school in my town in Pelham.
So like a public school.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm a junior at this time. Had taken like a little bit of time off from Muay Thai. I'm a junior now at Pelham High School, and I was like, okay, I want to get back into fighting, but I want to do strictly boxing and really learn boxing. And also at the Muay Thai Academy, we didn't spar at all. It wasn't like, there was no real like fighting. We were just doing drills and stuff. So this place, Morris Park Boxing Club, which is a very, very respectable and rough and rugged type gym. Like there are very high end pro fighters in there. And it's, like I said, it's in kind of a rundown area of the Bronx. So like when you see it, you're like, this place is like where all these like great fighters are coming out of. But I remember I was training there in the basement. Like I wasn't on the main floor where all the good guys were. I was in the basement with 2 other kids, and we had our trainer or coach. His name is Pablo. And I saw him recently within the last couple of years. He looks the exact same. It's hilarious. He looks exactly like LeBron James. Yeah, it's insane. And he doesn't age too. He's like a vampire. He looks the exact same.
Damn.
But yeah, we were training down the gym every day after school. And Morris Park was like where I first started to get into actually, like that's the first time I got into a ring and got like punched in the face. And I was 16 at the time, and you know, they were like putting me in there with like grown ass men.
I was just say, was anybody else your age?
Yeah, the kids I was training with in the basement, I think they were around my age. But I had no idea at this time about competing either. I didn't really know like what the deal was. And I asked Pablo, I was like, so what is all this? Like, why is everyone training? Like, what's it like?
Where's the payoff?
Yeah. I was like, so what's like, I was just like, why are we here? Like, what are we training for? And it's funny because the guy goes like, it was such a just iconic moment. He looks at me, goes, the New York Golden Gloves, man.
No way.
And this at the time, like that was like when Daily News was sponsored, and he was like, man, the Daily News, they would eat a white boy like you up. Like, yeah, that was another thing too. Like just from going to different gyms growing up, like I was always kind of the minority in a sense. Like a lot of the gyms predominantly Black and Hispanic, and they've just been like hilarious. Like I remember one gym I went to, these guys were just like, yo, who's this Justin Bieber looking ass coming in here?
That's wild. So what kind of like impact do you think that had on your personality? Because that's a wild life experience that clearly you've spent how many hundreds or thousands, probably thousands of hours in these kinds of situations. Like I always bring it up to just say like, you know, where I grew up had an impact on me, and it wasn't a diverse area at all. Yeah. And I was out in the country, and like I talk about kids growing up in the city or close to the city where it's like, dude, I see kids in a stroller and I'm like, just their sensory input is going crazy compared to, you know, what I went through. But what did being in those gyms and being with those kinds of guys and adults, like the impact that it had on you?
It made me feel like the man. I'm not going to lie. Like I felt so cool, like going there every day after school, driving in, like it felt just very real, you know, like there was it just felt real and cool. Like it just felt, that's what it felt like, cool. And I wasn't good, obviously, like when you first start, but I was just pumped at the fact that I was there in that environment all the time and like actually learning and going through the training. And so I stayed at this gym for the remainder of high school. And then like towards the end of high school before college, I had found a gym that was closer to my house. It was like 5 minutes away. It's called Champs Boxing Club in a town called New Rochelle. And that ended up becoming my home gym for the next 5.5 years. And that's where I really developed. Like we were sparring all the time in there. And yeah, so that's where like I kind of like took it to the next level in fighting. And still I wasn't like, I had no intention to really compete. But I was always in the gym, just training and sparring. And that's how you get good at fighting, is just by sparring. And I think there may be a misconception, like when people hear sparring, they think it's like practice fighting.
I was going to say, cause like I know nothing. Like I, just like everybody else, like I enjoy the UFC. It's a blast to watch when there's a big boxing match, you know, I know who wins or I'll catch some of it, but I'm not like paying for any pay-per-views or anything like that. But like what does sparring mean? What does that entail?
So sparring is like the only difference between sparring and like a real fight most of the time is that in a real fight, there are judges and there's a winner and a loser, which makes sparring almost more dangerous because you'll do more rounds and there's a lot of ego involved and you're not necessarily like focusing on defense. You're just trying to prove yourself. And so a lot of times sparring, especially if you go to other gyms, will turn into these dog fights and you're just doing round after round after round, just beating the shit out of each other. It's not like there are times where you're like, all right, we're going to go light. But like every fighter knows, it's like almost like a meme. Like when you say, let's go light, it just like immediately escalates into just full on fighting. So yeah, sparring is fighting. It's not like an official competition.
It sounds like practice. It sounds light.
It's like the name makes it sound like
it's just a couple guys sparring over.
Yeah, just sparring. No, but like sparring is like I said, people get injured in sparring too. Yeah. Like that's where a lot of injuries happen because guys are just pushing the limits. But yeah, so at Champs, we were sparring all the time, and that's kind of where I started to develop more as a boxer, like a fighter. And when I went off to college, I didn't go to any gyms down there during the school year, but I would focus I was like so gung ho on boxing. Like I thought at this point, I'm just like, okay, I'm in it. This is really cool. And I just want to get good at it. Like, I just think it gave me a lot of confidence. And I just thought it was cool. Honestly, I thought like the idea of like knowing how to fight, cause it's kind of a niche thing. I just thought it was cool, and I'm just like, I'm in it. I might as well keep doing it. And so at school, I would just do strictly boxing workouts, just a lot of like push-ups and burpees and whatnot, and shadow boxing with resistance bands. I did that all the time. And it's funny because when I would come home for breaks, like winter break or summer break, I'd be back at Champs every day training. And one of the breaks I came back, the owner of the gym, this guy Ryan O'Leary, who's the man, he was like, your punches look super straight and sharp. Like, what have you been doing down at school? And I was like, let's go. Like, it's just like a lot of shadow boxing with resistance bands.
That's a great feeling.
Yeah. So yeah, I was at champs throughout college, and then my senior year of college, like how I actually got into competing. I saw this kid from my town put up an Instagram post of him like after a fight in like full uniform, and the uniform he was wearing was it had New York Athletic Club on it. That's the organization that I was competing for. And just to explain like what the New York Athletic Club is, it was previously like initially known as this organization that helped develop amateur athletes to send them to the Olympics.
Okay.
Like back in like 1870, that's when it first started. And
Oh, sick. 'Cause when I saw that picture of you representing like that, I was like, I know what that, or I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Like,
So they have like a long history of all different types of sports, like swimming, water polo, judo, just like all these different random sports, and boxing's one of them. But eventually they turned it into like a members only club. They kind of built it around that fact that it was like this iconic athletic organization. And I guess at some point they're like, all right, we're going to make it so that members can join. And so in the city on 59th Central Park South, there's this massive building, and there's like restaurants inside of it. There's a hotel in it. Obviously like a ton of different floors of training facilities, like floors dedicated to like boxing, judo, swimming, golf, squash, whatever. So I reached out to this kid. I was like, yo, like, how'd you get, like, how are you competing for this team? And he was like, oh, I just like, joined. I just like walked into the practice and they took me on. And I was like, I want to do this. Cause like this kid didn't fight. Like I guess he had just started that year and like took a fight. And I was like, yo, if I do this, like, I know I'll like do well.
You make it.
And so he kind of like filled me in, and he was like, this is the guy to contact, the chairman of the club of the boxing program. And I had emailed him and just let him know. I was like, hey, I'm graduating. I'm going to be living in the city, and I want to join the team and like compete. And he was like, yeah, like we practice like this night and this night at this time. And so after school, I was living at home for a year. So I was just in champs every day after work, and then eventually moved into the city with two of my best friends. We were living in the Lower East Side. And I don't remember why I did this, but I didn't go directly to the New York Athletic Club to like get onto the team. I started training at another gym in Manhattan called Mendez, which is another like very reputable gym with a lot of great fighters. But also it's like this quasi mix of fighters. And then since it's in Midtown, it'll have like, like white collar guys training, like wanting to be in a rugged environment and get in. Yeah.
I have some friends that do that.
Yeah. So I went there for a few months just to, like I said, I don't remember why I did this, but went there for a few months, and I was working with this one trainer, and I was like very antsy to like start sparring. Cause at this point I could hold my own, and I could, I like knew what I was doing in the ring. And I was talking to this trainer. I'm like, yo, can I spar? Like, I want to fight. And he's like, yo, you just started. Like, you got to give us like, I was like, no, like I'm telling you, I can fight. And like the following week, he's like, okay, tonight you're sparring against so-and-so. I forget his name, but it's just like massive black dude who wasn't like a fighter.
Yeah.
He was like one of the guys who was just in there trying to get a workout. And we go into the ring, and I just tuned this guy up. He had like 5 inches on me. He was massive, but he didn't like have experience. And I remember after that like sparring session, one of the kids outside of the ring, who is now like a very established pro, his name is Andy Dominguez. He was like, yo, you can fight, bro. Like, you can fight. And I remember I was like, damn, that was getting it from, because I knew who he was. He's like a 5-time national Golden Glove champion.
Damn.
And then after that, I had made the move to go to Nyack.
So that's when you started taking it, like, would you say you like leveled it up and started taking it more seriously?
No, I was taking it like the whole year leading into that. I was taking it seriously. Like I was at champs, like I said, and then moved in the city, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Mendez first and just, I guess, warm up before going to Nyack. And the night I went to Nyack, I get there and go to the boxing floor and walk in. It's like 7 p.m. And I go up to this guy. I'm just like, hey, is this the boxing practice? And it's just like very obvious. This is the boxing room. There's just like boxing shit everywhere. There's like 2 rings and just dudes just like training. And the guy looks at me. He's like, no, it's the fucking swim practice.
Like, welcome.
I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, get in. And I was like, that was weird. And start training. Like, I didn't know what to do. I felt very kind of, I didn't know like what to start doing. I didn't have like a coach or anything. And this guy who said that to me comes up to me 20 minutes later. He's like, hey, is your last name McNulty? I was like, yeah, why? He goes, yeah, I'm your uncle.
No.
I was like, what? I was like, you're my uncle. He's like, yeah, my name's Mike Fulham. I'm your uncle. He goes, and then he goes, I'm going to be coaching you. All right. And I was like, all right, I guess we figured out who my coach is. And after practice, I call my dad. I'm like, yo, Dad, do I have an uncle named Mike Fulham? And he was like, no, that's my cousin. And I'm just like, okay. But I kept that going just like at the club. Like I would refer to him as my uncle. And Mike was this like old school guy. He looked like Mike Fulham reminds me of almost like a guy from The Sopranos, like rugged, like slick back hair. He'd have on like the Yankees windbreaker, just looked like a Don.
Yeah.
Cool guy. But he was my first coach at Nyack. And I was training there for like a month or so, and no one had seen me fight either, like the first couple of weeks. And Mike was like, all right, like you're going to spar tonight against this kid. And I should clarify too, at this time, like at Nyack, there was no like unified team there. There were just a bunch of different coaches in the gym that had their own fighters. So it was like a bunch of different teams under Nyack.
And are those coaches, are they like getting paid, or is this just like almost like everybody's hobby?
Yeah, no, it's just like,
It's like a lifestyle.
yeah, it's just like they like teaching it. But because of that, like different coaches and different, like there was almost like animosity between the different teams, if you will, in the gym. And one night he's like, all right, you're going to be sparring this kid. And at the time, like I knew nothing about him. I didn't know like if he had experience or not. I just knew that he would like formerly was he was a professional lacrosse player or something.
The MLL?
Yeah.
Something like that? Yeah.
He played at Georgetown and then was on like the Boston Cannons or something. And he was like, yeah, you're sparring this kid tonight. And I'm like, all right, let's go. Like I'm all for it. And we get in the ring and just like tune this kid up. He's like dripping blood. And afterwards his coach like comes up to me and he's like, hey, like how many fights do you have? Because at this point I hadn't fought, like I hadn't competed. I'm just like, I don't have any fights. He's like, no, seriously, like how many fights do you have? I was like, I've never competed. And he just goes, you're going to win the Golden Gloves this year if that's the case. Like you've never competed. And I was like, oh shit, all right. And
so now it sounds like these guys are almost noticing who you are, but that you have the talent.
Yeah,
and then it sounds like, I'm just picturing this in my head, that like in this kind of gym type environment where word I would imagine gets around pretty quickly and organically, but that they almost want to bet on you, like in a sense of like, I mean, that's exciting. You have a young kid coming up that's like eager and has skills and has never fought.
Yeah. No, it was cool. And so like my first fight, it kind of like happened in a weird way. I was at practice one night and Mike was like, oh, there's this fight coming up in October. It's the Nyack team versus the West Point team. You should come to it and watch. Like not bring it up as in like you should fight in it. And I was like, can I fight? Like, I don't want to watch. Like, can I fight in it? And he's like, do you feel ready? Like, you haven't fought before. Do you want to? And I was just like, yes, like I want to fight. And so he was like, all right, like we'll make it happen. And so I remember at the time, like I didn't want anyone to come. I was like, in case I lose, I don't want people there. And no one had seen me fight before. All my friends knew that I was like, that I trained and whatnot. But I didn't want anyone to come. And one night I'm at my apartment with a few of my friends and I'm telling them about it. And my friend Gordon, he's like, all right, so like, how do I get tickets? I'm just like, nah, dude, like I don't want anyone coming. And he goes, yo, if you are getting into a ring with someone to go fight, there's nothing you can do to stop me from coming. And so I was like, all right, like you can come. Like that night it was settled that like all the guys in the room were going to come. A couple days later, a few more people text me. They're like, hey, I hear you're fighting. Can we come? And I was like, oh God. And then there was a certain point where I was like, screw it. I'm just going to invite everyone, and had reached out to just like all the people that I knew and let them know. And it eventually turned into this thing where like 100 kids were coming.
Damn.
100 kids for my first fight, which is not typical. Like amateur boxing, like the fights are usually in like little gyms where, you know, there's like max like 100 people watching, but the New York Athletic Club would host these events, like very like high scale events, just like hundreds of seats, just like food, alcohol around.
I was gonna say they had like bottle services. Looked like
it was a whole thing. It's like it's a really cool thing to fight in, especially if you have a crowd. And leading up to that fight, I was super nervous because I remember they told me the kid I was fighting, and I looked him up online and saw that he was Eastern European. And I'm just like, oh, fuck. Like, God damn it. Like, and start to really get into my head about it just in the weeks leading up. I remember one night I was like at a track running and just broke down into tears. Just like, what have I gotten myself into? All of these people are coming and I'm just going to get my ass kicked by this like Eastern European kid. But at that time, it's like, you can't back out, you know what I mean? And the night of the fight, I get there and I see the whole West Point team walking in, and I'm waiting there, like waiting to see the kid, like to size him up. Just like, how big is he? You know, because you can't really tell online, just seeing a headshot. The kid never walks in. And I'm freaking out now because it's like, oh, maybe this kid pulled out and all these people just bought tickets and I have to tell them that I'm not fighting tonight because my opponent didn't show up. I go up to Mike, like my uncle. I'm like, yo, Mike, like the guy I'm fighting isn't here. And I'm kind of freaking out at this point. And he's like, hold on, like, let me go talk to their coach. And he's like, no, you're not fighting that kid tonight. Like, you're going to be fighting Nathan. I was like, who's Nathan? And I just like look over. Nathan's just like this massive tatted up dude. It's like, oh, Nathan. Okay. And at the time too, I was fighting at 185 pounds, which is crazy because like this past tournament, I was fighting at 165 pounds.
I was gonna say, you're not, you even 185 now?
Oh, I'm like 190 right now. Yeah. Yeah. But this kid, Nathan, was just like a big dude. And my friends after the fight were telling me, because he walked out past them and I walked out on the other side of the gym. They're like, I'm not going to lie. Like when we first saw this kid walk out, we were all really nervous. And I was still confident, like at that time, like before the fight, looking at him, just trying to just like gauge like what type of, like if he's good or not. But I was still confident. And there was a moment where I was watching him warm up, like shadow box, and saw that he was very green. I was like, this kid just got into fighting. Like this year, I'm gonna win this fight. And that just gave me a ton of confidence and went out and I won unanimously, like pieced this kid up. It was sick. It was so cool. Just like all of my friends there. It was the craziest experience for a first fight too.
Yeah.
We ended up all going back to my apartment, like all 100 of the kids, to our like tiny Lower East Side apartment, and stayed up till like 6 a.m. I was so hungover the next day because I wasn't drinking at all during the training.
And the adrenaline rush. And that's the thing, is like we'll get back to the boxing part, but one of the things that I noticed from literally just afar was your crew of friends and family. And like the amount of support that you had through this most recent run was insane, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like I got to meet you and I got a vibe, like, you understand certain people. So certain people are just good people that get along with everybody. But then that to me like kicked it up an entire different level. And then when I was talking to Aiden, he's like, yeah, dude, that's just you. Just like knows everybody, just like has, like what did it mean to you to have that kind of support off the bat?
Dude, it was so special. I mean, yeah, I don't know how I know all these people. And a portion of them at the fight were like friends of friends that like my friends invited their friends. But yeah, it's like, I remember thinking like, I can't believe all these people are coming. I haven't talked to these people, like some of them in years, and they want to come and support me. That was like a huge thing throughout the tournament. Just all the support that I was getting. I kind of promoted the fight ahead of time. I like put out this post on Instagram in like November being like, hey, I'm fighting in this tournament in January. It turned out to be in February because of the scheduling, but like put it out there ahead of time. I was like this post if you want to come, all that, and just like kind of got it going like that. And then when it got closer, I started sending out texts, and yeah, the full count ended up being 193. And then, and on top of that, there were also people there that I didn't invite directly that were like, that came just from hearing about it to come support me. And it really hit when the night of the first fight of the tournament, I walked out and you just see all the seats with my name on it, like McNulty Reserve. McNulty, it was a sea of them.
Yeah.
But it was crazy. It was like, I remember after the first fight that morning, I didn't look at my phone all night, but I just woke up to like 50 text messages from all these different people, like my friends' parents and whatnot. And it was, like I said, it was very special and just like, yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say, because that's one of the funny things is that we're all just normal people.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. But then you have moments in life like that where it's like, it makes you feel on top of the world. Like that kind of thing. You know? Like that attention, that, like you said, the support, it just throws you into an entirely different, mindset. And I imagine that's kind of like a high in a certain way.
Yeah. It was really cool. Like, I mean, it definitely like put on pressure in a sense, knowing that there were like all these different eyes on it. But it was cool. And like you said before, how you felt like almost like you were a part of it, like watching along.
Yeah.
Cause I made sure to, like post about it, like stories to kind of keep the momentum going and like built this whole thing around it, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Cause I'm all into that. Just like, but there were guys reaching out to me who I just knew from like a surf trip I went on 3 years ago, and some guys like, yo, bro, I've been following along. This is so sick. Like you're going all the way. And just like messages like that, or people, another one that I would get a lot is people would just say how it was inspiring. They're like, this is so inspiring what you're doing right now. And that was really cool to hear. Cause I would hear that like over and over again. Like this is super inspiring. And that would like inspire me. Like the fact that I was inspiring them, it's like, that's inspirational.
Yeah. Just to see anybody going out there and just doing that, because especially in this physical way.
Yeah.
Like you're out there on an island.
Yeah.
There's nobody coming to help you.
Yeah.
And you're just, I don't know. There's something, I guess we'll take not a timeout, but just from the boxing part of it. Like, so that was the first time. So you've gone through almost like 2 phases, it sounds like, in your fighting career.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Like, didn't you stop at one point?
Yes. So I did. After that first fight, there was that fight was in October, and this was 2020 at this point. October was 2019, but then my next fight was in the Golden Gloves tournament, which was 2020. And same deal, like had all my friends come again at Nyack. They hosted the first round of the tournament and fought this kid who was Eastern European. Like he like this kid, Dmitry Petrovic, and I beat him. You could see it in the photo at the end of the fight. He's covered in blood. But the thing was, that fight, I didn't bring my mouth guard. And I had to use a mouth guard that wasn't molded into my mouth. Like, when you buy a mouth guard fresh out the thing, and it's just like loose around your teeth. It came out like 5 or 6 times. And you can get disqualified for that. I ended up getting 2 points deducted, which is like a huge, like to get a point deducted, you have to do something egregious. And I got 2 deducted and lost by split decision. So that means even with those 2 points off, one of the 3 judges was like, he still won the fight.
Yeah. Which
like speaks to just how I outperformed the kid in a sense. But yeah, after that fight, I was like kind of in a bad place. I was upset because, it's my second fight, but I also thought at that point, I was like, I'm never going to lose. And had lost in front of all my friends and whatnot. And I was like, I'm done. I don't want to compete again. And that was also the onset of COVID. So
Yeah.
it was a blessing in disguise that I didn't win though, because that tournament never ended up continuing. So all the kids who had advanced to the next round, they were just in kind of this like limbo where it's like, all right, you got to stay on weight. We're going to let you know when you're fighting next. And so they're like going on for months, just maintaining their weight.
And in the middle of COVID.
Yeah. And it never ended up happening. But yeah, that was the end of it. I just stopped.
And did you
2020.
But all right, so tell me the story about how you went, because I know you mentioned it a little bit when we were talking, but like how you got back into it the second time around.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the more wild.
Yeah. So it was last year, and I want to say it was April. I was coming home from a ski trip with a bunch of my friends, and I got this call from my dad, and he's like, and it's like he's on speakerphone with my mom. And he's like, Hugh, like, we need to tell you something. And I just like immediately just like, oh shit, this is bad.
Yeah.
And he's like, Rudy died today. And Rudy was our dog. And this dog was like, kind of like the focal energy point of our family.
Yeah.
And I saw him like just a week prior too at the time. He was just like the cutest, just like most human dog. And like I said, just like the center focus of our family. Like my parents loved this dog. I loved him. My sister loved him. And they're like, Rudy died today. And, I start crying immediately. I'm just like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And my mom just like, I was walking him out in the street and this dog got off the leash and like what ended up happening was this guy was walking his dog down the street. It got loose. Like 50-yard sprint at my mom, mauled her to the ground in the middle of the road, like bit through her gloves. She just like puncture wounds on her hands. And then after it was done attacking my mom, went onto my dog and bit my dog through the throat.
Oh, Jesus.
Just like grabbed onto his throat, shook it up or whatnot. And then finally the owner came over, pulls his dog off. My mom picks up our dog and she's just like screaming for my dad, runs into the house. She's like, Chuck, like we need to go to the vet. And my dad runs out and they race to the veterinarian. And they were just like, we got to put him down. Like, there's nothing we can do. Like his trachea is punctured. And so it was just a super tragic, just sudden death. Right.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going home for a couple of weeks to be with my family. And it was this whole thing with, dealing with the owners, like all the legal shit. And I was just so pissed and upset.
And how long or when did you get, like, how old were you when you got Rudy?
We had gotten him like, he was like a foster dog. We got him a year prior. He had a rough upbringing, like bouncing house to house.
Oh.
And that's why we loved him. Cause we were like, yo, you found your home now. And he was like a little prince.
Oh, dude.
Yeah. But I was home for 2 weeks with my mom and dad and just, like I said, so upset and like pissed off, and would be in my garage. Just like, I have this heavy bag in my garage and would just like wail away on it, just out of like, not boxing, just like doing anything to it, like hitting it just to release this emotion. And one afternoon, I was like, had this thought I was like, okay, I'm going to use all of this emotion and just all this energy and channel it into getting back into competing and winning the Ringmasters or Golden Gloves tournament. And that was like the definitive moment. The next day I started the training. Like I remember going to like this field and just like busting out like sprints and burpees, and was just so out of shape, just thinking this is going to be a long, long ass journey. And this is like end of April at this point.
Okay.
And eventually go back into the city, after a couple of weeks, I'm back at my apartment, and now I'm going back up to the club again and I'm training. And at this time too, there's no boxing program. Like it had kind of all fallen apart.
After COVID, yeah.
Yeah. There's no coaches or anything. And I had been talking to like one of the people on the board there, being like, hey, when's the coach coming? Like, I really want to compete. And this lady's like, we're working on it. Just wait. Like he'll come. And so I was just training on my own. Like I had hit up a guy that I knew that was a coach and was working with him for a little bit. And I'm glad that I ended up not working with him because he was about to charge me like $500 a month to train and coach me and whatnot. And one night I'm at Nyack, like the club, training, and there's another fighter there, like giving a lesson. And he's like, hey, like Elise told me you were asking about like when the coach is coming. He's coming tonight. If you want to meet him. I'm just like, really? Like, that's great. Like, he's coming tonight. And he's like, yeah, this guy, he works with Team USA. He's really good. And I had no idea what he meant. And halfway through my workout, I just see this dude come in, just like decked out in USA boxing gear. Just looks like an absolute beast, like the biggest calves you've ever seen in your life. And he walks in, just like eyes the place down, comes in, starts talking to the guy I was talking to previously. And I went up to him after practice and introduced myself. And his name is Rich Stevenson. He's one of the coaches of like the Team USA boxing team. So like the Olympic team.
Damn.
And I spoke to him. I was like, hey, like you're the new coach here? He's like, yeah, I'm going to get this program up and going again. What are your goals in boxing? And I said, I just want to win this tournament. Like I want to win the 2024 Golden Gloves tournament. And he's like, all right, like what's your experience? Told him and, showed him videos from like previous fights and whatnot. He's like, all right, like we'll get it done. You start Monday. And it's like a Friday at that time. And I had no idea what I was getting into. And I'm just like, all right, like cool. And show up Monday and it's just me and him. And we trained just me and him, like private training. I wasn't paying anything. We trained 2 hours a night, Monday through Friday. Just doing very technical based drills, and just like it was the best training that you could get. Because what I was like, we were doing everything that Team USA would do. Because he was the guy like facilitating all the training regimens. Like it was an exact duplicate of that training program, which is all built upon like very specific things to make a good fighter. And it's funny because like 3 weeks into that, we'd only been training 3 weeks together. He was like, hey, there's this event at the club. Like there's a fight here. If you want to fight in it, I don't think you're ready yet. Just given like it's been this many years. I don't think you're ready yet. But if you want to, you can. And I was like, yeah, I want to fight in it. And so ended up taking the fight. And the actual environment of the fight itself, it wasn't like the previous ones at Nyack. The previous ones were in the main gym. And so it's kind of like stadium seating around. And this fight is this event in a dining room where there's a bunch of just like tables around. Guys are eating steak dinners in suits watching. And it's honestly like a weird environment to fight in.
Yeah.
Like you feel like it's like kind of like Mandingo vibes a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, I was talking to one of the fighters before. This kid just like, yo man, doesn't this feel a little fucked up to you? Like
I was gonna say like everybody in suits.
Yeah. He's like, this kid's taught me, he's like, is this a little fucked up? Like a bunch of minorities beating the shit out of each other in front of these white ass men.
Yeah,
I was like, yeah, it's weird. And so that night I ended up fighting this kid and like quickly realized that I was just like not in conditioning shape. I hadn't done any running at all. I just kind of relied on the training in the gym that we had been doing for those 3 weeks. And I was like, no, I'm good. I'll be good. And I didn't like get my ass kicked. Like it was a pretty like back and forth fight. But in the second round, I got hit with a really hard uppercut that had like swelled my eye shut. And the kid saw that and then hit it again before the second round ended. And going into the third round, I can't see out of my eye at all. And my coach is like, you want to keep fighting? And I'm just like, yes, like do not stop this fight. And before the third round started, the doctor comes up to the ropes and he's like, I need to check you out. Because they'll do that sometimes if someone's visibly injured. And he's like, your eye is swollen shut. Like you can't keep fighting. And I just looked at this guy. I was like, do not stop this fight right now. Like don't stop. Because, this was like this was the first fight back. Like this was the first step into the journey for doing the tournament.
Yeah.
I was like, if you like, do not stop the fight. So I ended up fighting the rest of the third round with just one eye open, which is really difficult to have just one eye because it messes with your depth perception and whatnot.
Yeah.
And the kid just kept targeting it too. Like he was going after that eye. By the end of it, the whole left side of my face was just like swollen out to here. Got it checked out the next day, had a fractured orbital.
Damn.
And that just goes to show too, like people will think, oh, like you've got headgear on and whatnot. Like, so it's not, it's, you know, it's like, it's a little safer, but the headgear is not for impact at all. Like it's open face. The headgear is for cuts. Like it'll be padding around up here. Like when you're in the clinch, like banging your head, it's to prevent cuts. Cause like when you start bleeding, they have to call the fight. But yeah, that night afterwards, I was just so upset. And I was just like, this whole plan has gone to shit. Like I just got my ass kicked. Like it looked like I got my ass kicked. And that was what I was really upset about. I didn't care that I lost. It was like, you know, I told my dad, I was like, I'm definitely going to win this fight. And I told everyone at work, like, I'm going to win. And I was so excited about it. And, you know, just to have it end with like that, like just a huge
the visible part of it too.
Like my head, like one side of it looked like an alien. Like it was, you know, it wasn't just a black eye. It was like severely swollen. And after that night, my dad's like talking to me. We went out to dinner and he was so cool about it too. I was afraid that he was going to be very upset and just like worried and scared for me, but he acted as if nothing had happened. But we had a very real conversation where he was like, you know, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. Like, you don't need to be like the monkey in the ring, like entertaining everyone. Like, you know, it's a good effort, but you should just, you know, you don't need to be doing this. And I was kind of on the same page with him that night. I was like, you're right. Like, screw this. I'm done. Like taking these beatings, whatever. And I'm not doing it. And so I was like set on that night. And this is June at this point. And, the next day, my coach calls me. He's like, how you feeling? I like give him the rundown. He's like, all right, just take the week off. Come back next week. And for whatever reason, like talking to my coach at that point, like he kind of got me back into it. I was like, I don't want to let this guy down.
Yeah.
You know, he kind of held me accountable and had almost like a spark reignited in me. Like, all right, I'm not going to give up. So started going back to the gym the next week and training. And I remember one night walking up, just like still just terrible black eye and, you know, coming off a loss like that. I was like, damn, like this is like what it's about. Like going back to the gym and being like, I'm going to still keep going, even though this just happened. But it was tough. It was just like, you know, your self-esteem takes a big blow.
Yeah.
And I was also just like, shit, this coach probably thinks I'm shit. But
I was going to say, because like as you're saying that, like what is the questions that pop into my head is like, what is your relationship with pain first and foremost? So 2 questions here. What's your relationship with pain? And then what's your relationship with attention? Because that's what I'm thinking about as you're telling me essentially like parts of your life story, especially when it pertains to boxing.
yeah,
You know, the things that keep coming up is like you said, like entertaining.
Yeah.
And with all the people. And it's like,
Yeah.
And it's like, I can see that in our limited interactions.
yeah,
But I also know, like, I relate to you because I know myself. I like that attention.
Yeah.
I like that I'm the fucking guy. You
Yeah.
know? Like, when the attention's on you, it's great. But then when you get your ass kicked and the attention's still on you,
yeah.
you know. But what would you say, like, as far as dealing with the physical pain and then also the emotional, you know, side of that?
I mean, the pain itself is not really like a big thing. Like eventually you get kind of battle hardened, as they call it. Like the actual like pain of getting hit, it like eventually becomes like almost non-existent. Like it's there, but it's you get so used to it where it doesn't have an impact on you. Like when you first start fighting, you first start sparring and you're getting hit, you have this like natural reaction, like the fight or flight, and it's always flight, like where you'll get hit and just alarm bells are going off in your head and you get really nervous and start breathing heavy and you just get super scared and you're kind of on your back foot backing up, and you feel those shots too. Like when you're first starting out, even though you have like even more adrenaline going, you feel every single one of them and it's scary. and it takes like quite a bit to develop like the instinct like of getting hit and not immediately going onto your back foot and getting nervous, but rather getting hit. And it's like, okay, I just got hit once. I need to throw 4 punches at him right away because I know 2 of them won't land, and I want to come out on top in the exchange because like it's a point system. And that's what differentiates experienced fighters from more green guys is like when you see in a fight a more experienced fighter, when he gets tagged, he'll get right up in your face right away. But then as far as like the attention thing, yeah, I mean, growing up, like I was always an entertainer. Like I loved being just like entertaining like my friends, just doing stupid and funny stuff. I was talking about this beforehand, but I was in theater growing up for quite a bit, doing musicals, and like I like that a lot. Like, I mean, I miss it sometimes.
Yeah, you said you were Willy Wonka.
Yes, yeah, I was Willy Wonka. I was like the White Rabbit in Alice in Wonderland. I always got the lead but because I was good at it. I had a thing for like acting and just like performing. But yeah, I guess like that aspect of it, like in terms of fighting, like I found it cool, like having people come in and watch.
Yeah. And there's like an uncomfortable, like, you know, I'm kind of working through it like actively now, but like there's like an uncomfortable acceptance within yourself that you enjoyed that. Because nobody wants to like say with their ego, like, yeah.
I know,
like,
yeah.
Like nobody wants to say like, yeah, like that. But like I do, we do. Like, you know, it's just like,
yeah.
And that in part, you know, can drive people for, again, different reasons.
Yeah.
But it's because to me, it's all the same thing. Like when you said that about like, yeah, it was surprising that you were in theater, but it wasn't surprising when you're like, yeah, I was in the lead role. Like, that's just like, it's common patterns throughout people's lives. They're like, oh, it just keeps showing up.
Yeah.
This thing that they like keeps showing up in different ways.
Yeah. I think I like attention like in the right moments. And this probably goes back to like the whole ego thing, but like when you're doing something cool, it's like, yeah, I want people to see like, this is cool.
Yeah.
Like if I like make something cool, like art or whatever, I'll be like, yeah, I want to show this to the world. Like it's cool. It's like why they have, you know, artists, like they have galleries. It's like for people to see like what they did.
Yeah.
Same concept. So you worked at something, show it, you know?
Did you want to, cause like I think about this, like when I'm not in a good place, and I haven't been, I think we talked about this a little bit kind of beforehand, like just trying to sort my life out. But like you almost want to crawl up in a hole and just like don't look at me for the next, you know, this is coming from like where I'm at right now, but it's like the attention's great when you're doing well, but then when you're not doing well, it like makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like I love when people ask me about the podcast. I absolutely love it. You know, for the past 4 months or so, whatever, you know, we haven't done as much or done as many episodes, and it's like I then don't want people to ask about it, because then it's like, oh, like I gotta explain why we haven't, or like this or that. And it's like, you know, to relate to that, it's like, how do you feel the next week going to work when you've got your eyes shut, you know?
Terrible.
Yeah. And then people asking about it. Like,
awful.
Oh, what happened?
Yeah. No, it was awful. Even during like, there were points during the tournament when I was, you know, still in it and winning, where I would have nights getting in my head thinking like, okay, I've kind of like really put myself out there, constantly like posting about this and like, look at me. And that was, you know, I wanted to do that, like build, like keep the hype going, to have like people engaged, and I was proud of it. Like I was proud of what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I had moments where I would think like, all right, you know, like, am I like putting myself out there too much? Like I felt very vulnerable.
Yeah.
I was like, you know, thinking about like what everyone thinks about it. Like, you know, what if they think I'm not good? Like, what if they think I'm full of myself or whatever? And I would just like start to go into like everyone, like thinking about all the different people's thoughts around like what I was doing. And eventually I was like, you know what, like you'll never be able to please everyone.
Yeah.
There's no point in thinking about like what other people think about you, because it's none of your business. It's like what someone thinks about you, like that's what they think. That's their thing. Like if they don't like you, that's their problem, you know?
Yeah. And it only takes up as much energy and space in your head as you let it.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like, you never have to think about that again. But sometimes you can like ruminate on those type of things.
Yeah.
But to talk about the vulnerability side, because like this, doing what you're doing by coming here and talking about all this is extremely vulnerable. And like, have you always been like that? Like, is this something that's new and different for you to be able to like open up, or like, is this how you talk with your friends? Like where you're kind of, I mean, you've been an open book.
Yeah.
Like we've done now 21 of these, and like not many people come in ready to just get right to it and open up.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is obviously the first time I've been in like something like this, like a podcast, but no, I think I've always been kind of like outgoing and willing to share my opinion or just like share a story. I've always been pretty outspoken, I think. Yeah,
that's funny. Well, let's take a quick time out. I gotta hit the bathroom. All right, so we just took a quick re-up on coffee, but I want to transition back to the rest of the boxing, especially the past year. So yeah. I think we left off. You were kind of like in June. You said
yes
after this fight that you lost.
Yeah.
And then having to deal with the physical pain of it.
Yeah.
And then the emotional pain. But what was it that your coach said that made you feel like ready to go again? Because that sounds like a pretty quick turnaround from the conversation with your dad.
It wasn't that he necessarily said anything specific. It was just I could tell that he really believed in me, that I was capable of. He was like, "Look, like that fight, like I said, I didn't think you were ready. You've only been training this many weeks." It was, like I said, him holding me accountable. I didn't want to let him down, and just the fact that he was such a high caliber coach, and I could tell that he saw that I was capable of it. I think that played a big part in me deciding to go back. So we kept training the rest of the summer, just me and him. And then eventually our gym was getting renovated, like went under renovation. So we started training at another gym in the city. And he had me sparring with these two kids that were really good. And I was getting my ass kicked. Like these guys were beating me up, but it was not necessarily because they were better than me. It was just because of my conditioning was so bad. And after like the third week of sparring and just like a specific sparring session, having just taken a beating, I was in the bathroom just like washing the blood off my face. And my coach walks in and he was like, "Look, like I can train you 2 hours a night every night until I'm blue in the face. But if you're not going to put in the work outside of the gym, you're not going to win this tournament." And that was like where a switch flipped. And from that day forward, I made conditioning like the biggest priority. So I went from training once a day, like in the nighttime, doing boxing training with my coach, to all of a sudden now doing tons of like burpees and sprints in the morning before work. And I became so committed to just getting in better like cardiovascular shape. And I became obsessed with it. Like I would go to bed excited, like it sounds crazy, but excited for like a sprinting session the next day, just to like try to beat previous times. And because I could see improvement too. Like I could see myself getting in better shape, like cardio wise. And it just like really fired me up. And one thing that had happened in that last sparring session, I cut open my eyebrow. And so I was out of sparring for like a month or so, a month and a half. And our gym eventually was finished, like the work. So we went back there and didn't go back to that gym for a while. But in between, when we had left, it was probably like 3 months or so before we went back again to spar those kids again. And in this 3-month period, I was just going balls to the wall, like all things strength and conditioning in the mornings. So like working out twice a day. And I remember going back that first night to spar the kids again, and I treated it as if it were like a fight. I remember walking there, like just listening to music, getting really focused. I was all focused like throughout the day, thinking about it. Cause these kids were like handling me. Yeah. They're tuning me up just because I was running out of gas and couldn't do what I wanted to do. I couldn't throw punches, and I was just very focused on conserving energy. And so I was just a punching bag. but it all just changed. Like I went back that first night after 3 months of just really going hard doing strength and conditioning and tuned both the guys up. And it was sick to see. Just I felt like it was the first time sparring too since then, and it just felt I was able to like just fight really hard for all the rounds. I didn't get tired, and it made just like a world of a difference being able to do what you want to do without getting tired. Because getting tired in fighting is the most dangerous thing, because you're just, like I said, you become a heavy bag. You become a sitting target.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets scary. That's where you get hurt.
I would say, is that the priority, is to be in the best physical,
Yes.
Obviously it sounds like a dumb question, but just like you're saying, cardiovascular.
Yes. Yeah. Cardio, especially in amateur fighting, because it's only 3 rounds. Whereas like, pro fighting, you have 10 or 12. So you can take your time in the beginning and kind of feel the guy out. You can give up rounds and, not exert as much energy. But amateur fighting, it's a sprint the whole way through. So it's just like you are fighting hard all 3 rounds to prove to the judges that you won the fight.
So 5-minute rounds?
No, 3.
3-minute rounds.
Yeah.
10 minutes of just punching each other in the face.
Yeah, but it's very fast paced. But yes, to answer your question, conditioning is like the main thing. If you're not conditioned, you will not win. Doesn't matter how skilled you. I mean, obviously, like when there's a huge discrepancy in the skill,
yeah,
like that can take over. But if you guys are compatible in skill level, the guy who's more conditioned will often come out on top.
Yeah. So what was your strength at that point?
I would say my strength was I was good at I had good footwork, and that's like a big part of fighting is like having good footwork. So I was like elusive and would be able to position myself well. But another, I think like something that developed just this past year from working with this coach was realized that I had a lot more power than I thought. Like I had never dropped anyone in sparring or anything. And like just like from working with this coach, like learning, he essentially re-taught me how to fight in a different way, and like leveraging more into punches, like using my full capability, and kind of built up a reputation in my gym for being like a hard hitter. And so for instance, one of my sparring partners was he won the heavyweight Golden Gloves last year. He fights at 203. He's probably 6'4". And the first time I sparred him, I put him on the floor with a body shot. And that just became a regular thing going forward. Like I would always, this kid hated sparring me. He was like, bro, you hit harder than the kids I fight.
Damn.
And I dropped him 4 times in like when we were sparring. We did 4 rounds. I put him on the ground 4 times from both head shots and body shots. And then one time we were like doing a drill, and this kid was like, it feels like you have steel in your gloves when you hit me, because you're just going body shots. And body shots are also like the worst thing to get hit with. You'd rather get hit in the head than the body, because like the body, you feel it.
Really?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, is like from a complete outsider's perspective, like I don't understand what makes a good boxer a good boxer. Like they talk about Floyd Mayweather and how he dances around the ring and is the ultra defensive, and like I can try to see it, but like what makes somebody, like again, like all these guys now, like what makes each of them the killers that they are.
Yeah, they hit more than the guy they're fighting and get hit less.
Yeah,
it's simple. It's simple. They're taking less shots and giving more. No, but yeah, I mean, what makes a good fighter is someone who's like, number 1, fight IQ. Number 2, like good footwork. So footwork's not just like being mobile, but also like every time you're throwing punches, that your feet have to be under you to be stabilized, like to throw a punch with like your max capability. And the footwork, like that was a huge emphasis throughout our training. We would just do drills, like so many drills every night. There was like each night of the week, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, were all dedicated to different drills around footwork. And I went through like 3 pairs of boxing shoes in this past year, and you just get crazy blisters on your feet from just so much footwork.
So you're doing like ladders, or like what are your?
Not we actually did like do something similar like that at certain points, but just like a lot of like fast feet drills, and then there's one drill we would do where you're just kind of like in this, like you're going in a circle for an hour, like in a boxer stance, like shuffling forward. And then there'd be like, you'd have like a certain combination you'd have to do, like 3 punches forward, 4 punches backward, and then 3 again forward. You'd do that. That'd be like one set of it. And then you'd switch to like another type of thing, like another type of combination. But the whole time you're just moving and like pivoting off your feet. There was another one where it's like you're doing like 3 side steps to the left and 3 to the right, and you're just doing that over and over again for an extent. It's very draining on your legs.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of like angle stuff, like getting angles. It's another big part of like a good fighter is someone who can find an angle. So if I'm like standing in front of you, like an example of like popping an angle would be like I'd throw a punch at you, and then I'll pivot off to the right and shift, and now I'm on this side of you. So like you're not even looking at me, and you're in a bad spot because I'm looking at you in my stance ready to go, and you've just been hit. And like you're kind of just combobulated and you're not even looking at me.
So you like, it makes me think about, I mean, I think of all things as like an art, all sports especially. It's like you're essentially setting people up for something.
Yeah.
So it's like when you're throwing these combinations, it's just like I can only translate to like lacrosse, where if you're you're about to split left to right, is like you have to sell that first to get them to bite, to put them out of position to again find that angle, like you're saying.
Yeah.
And I've never thought about boxing as the same type of things with the combinations. Like,
well, like the whole point about like selling, so in lacrosse, like selling like one side and then going to the other, like you're getting the guy to bite on that side, right?
yeah,
So a huge part of fighting is feinting. Like, well, you'll sell like the idea that you're about to throw a punch and get the guy to cover up. And a lot of times what you use that for is to close the distance. So like good fighters will know their range really well. Like they'll know when they're like an inch or two outside of like being able to get hit, or an inch or two outside of like where they'll be able to deliver a shot. And what they'll do to close that range is they'll feint. Like, and while they're feinting, they're taking like a little step forward, and the guy covers up, and that little step gets them in range. And at that point, the guy's covered up, and you can start off your combination, where the guy's not throwing anything, and you're on the offensive.
yeah. Damn, it's just like, I mean, it is like a dance.
Yeah, it's a dance, and it's like there's a reason why they call it like chess, because you're thinking ahead of time like what the other guy's going to do, and you'll throw throwaway shots too, where it's supposed to be a distraction, anticipating that he'll try to counter that, and you're like, all right, if I throw with my left hand, he's going to come back with his right hand, and I'm going to anticipate that to roll under it and then hit him with like a hook and a right.
Yeah. So crazy to think about, like the amount of thinking that goes into all of these things. Like it's just as mental as it is physical.
Yeah.
And I just think about how this applies to life, because again, you're not a full-time boxer.
Yeah, no.
You're doing a full-time job and then doing this at night and in the mornings. But so, all right, so you started focusing on your conditioning.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that started to help some things.
So started focusing on my conditioning, and then at a certain point, like I said, it was just my coach and myself training at this point. And then around December, he started to recruit in other fighters. So it became a team. Like, and all of a sudden there, we had 3 or 4 other guys who I became very close with. Like you just form this brotherhood with dudes when you're beating the shit out of each other. It's weird. Like by one of my boys, his name is Sean. He also fought in the finals at Madison Square Garden. He was like my main sparring partner, and we would fight like 8. We'd go like 8 or 10 4-minute rounds and just go at it. And it, for whatever reason, it makes you very close with the other person.
Yeah.
And it's fun too. Like to be able to like talk shit in the ring when you're fighting is just like a very unique thing.
Yeah.
It's not like playing one-on-one basketball.
I wonder if there's studies on that like, because I think about that a lot, that like pain bonds you.
Yeah,
Like,
it's strange, but it does.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody the other day about lacrosse workouts in college, and I was like, do I miss playing lacrosse? Sure. But like, honestly, some of the most fun days, they were always Friday mornings. We'd be out on the turf. Like we'd work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the like the weight room essentially. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we'd do like agility work.
Yeah.
But Friday mornings, we'd always go outside and they'd bring the sleds, they'd bring the sledgehammers, they'd bring the medicine balls. You're just like on the field, you're running like full field sprints and then doing something else. And it's like, those are the days that I remember out of anything, because you're so tired. You have 4 hours of sleep. You don't want to be there. You're exhausted. You hate it, but you're suffering together.
Yeah.
And there's some like weird primal thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's as you were talking earlier. I didn't want to jump in, but like a lot of this sounds so primal and old school, and it's just like,
yeah,
this is what they did thousands of years ago. You know, I would assume.
Yeah.
Just fight each other, and probably to the death back then.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so all right, so it sounds like you again headed in the right direction with all the conditioning and everything. When did that Golden Gloves like tournament start? Did you have to earn,
So
did you have to earn your way?
I'm sorry?
Did you have to earn your way into that?
No. You just have to be like a registered fighter to enter it. But it's like, anyone who's registered can enter it, but you're entering into a pool of a bunch of guys who all think they can win.
Yeah.
So you're going to sooner or later run into some guy that if you're not up to par, you could get hurt.
Yeah.
So not every fighter like enters into it. Only guys who are like, I think I can do it this year, will do it. The first round for me started late February. And prior to that, my coach had me fight in a number of fights to get warmed up. And I should also mention that I was fighting at 165 for this tournament, which was a huge part of the year leading up to this. So I'd lost 20 pounds from like November to start of January just by dieting and
What's your
working out.
diet look like? Because I was saying, you're talking about running around the ring for an hour.
Yeah.
And you're still at a calorie deficit.
It was really tough. Like I was always super, super tired, just fatigued, especially end of the week, like Friday. My diet was, I would intermittent fast. I wouldn't eat until noon. And then I would have just like ground turkey with rice. Then I'd have I'd had Greek yogurt with protein powder in it and oats. And then before I'd go work out, I'd have a banana. And then at nighttime, I'd come home. I wouldn't get home till like 10:30. I would have just grilled chicken breast with just so many greens just to fill me up. I would get like a cake mixing bowl full of salad and just throw all the shit in it. And I ate that every single day.
Damn.
And it wasn't like the diet itself wasn't bad. Like it was just that I could never slip up and really like eat bad food.
Or go out. Like you didn't drink that entire time.
No,
too,
yeah. Right? I mean, I had like drinks here and there.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really getting on that level.
Yeah.
So yeah, at this point, it's like January. My coach is having me do a number of fights just to get warmed up for the tournament. And like, it's right around the corner. Everyone's pumped up. My first fight of the year was out in Long Island, fought this kid, and they stopped the fight in the second round because I dropped him through the ropes, and it was just like an ass beating. And they're like, all right, they called the fight. And I was like, all right, let's go. Like started off the year strong.
Yeah, 1-0.
Yeah, had another fight against the next kid, won that. And then another one, and just like started getting this streak going. And I was like a different fighter in a sense. And then the tournament started. And this is where it gets like interesting. Tournament starts, they put out the bracket. There were 26 kids in my bracket who signed up in middleweight. And I got a bye in the tournament. And I think it was because I had accumulated those wins prior. And I had more fights. So at this point, I have like 5 or 6 fights. I get a bye in the tournament, and I see like, okay, I'm going to be fighting the winner of like this guy and this guy. And I went out to their fight to watch it, that round of the tournament. One of my buddies came with me to go scope them out, like to go scope out the 2 kids.
Yeah.
And I'm watching all the fights, like the guys, like paying attention to the guys on my side of the bracket, and like fight by fight, I'm just like, I would handle that guy. I'd handle that guy. I was like, that guy's trash. Like all, whatever. The 2 kids who come on, who I'm fighting the winner of, they get in the ring, and this kid just starts like lighting this dude up in the most like class way. So skilled, just so fast and skilled, like switches stances, went from orthodox to southpaw, like going between lefty and righty, which makes a difference. Like fighting someone in a lefty stance is tricky, especially if you're during the fight, they're in regular stance the whole time. I'm watching this fight, And I'm talking to my friend. I'm just like, all right, this kid's actually like pretty legit. This is going to be a tough fight. This was the fight that was the first round at Nyack where those 200 people came to. And I was so in my head about it leading up to it. I thought I was going to lose. I just kept rewatching his fight because it was, streamed online, and would watch it every single day and try to break it down. And at a certain point, I was like, this kid's probably going to beat me. Like he's more skilled than me and he's a lot faster. I just had a little bit of size on him. But at a certain point, I went through his fights and I put together this whole spreadsheet on like the tricks. He would set up these traps, and that's how he would land his shots, by like baiting you into throwing a certain punch. He would expect it coming, kind of how we were talking about chess and anticipating the next move. He would do that in a few different ways, and that's how he was landing all of his shots. So I put together this spreadsheet of like each round, like the punch he threw, what did the guy throw to like provoke that? Did the guy make some sort of mistake, or was it just like he fell into the trap? And then I put down like what stance the kid was in when he threw it, to see like, okay, this person, like 60% of the time he's fighting in southpaw, whatever. And eventually like came to this conclusion, like, okay, there's a way around this by just setting him up on his own setup. And so I had rehearsed this combination where I would throw a throwaway left hook. Like that's what he wanted you to do, throw a left hook so he could lean back and just come over quick with a right. I religiously rehearsed this combination like the weeks leading up to it. A throwaway left hook, put my hand up to block, and then a right hand, and then another left hook. And the night of the fight, it was super close. Like in the first round and second round, like we both knew that we were both good. Like no one wanted to get close and really start exchanging. And it took a little bit to actually start opening up. And then the start of the third round, like 13 seconds in, I'm not gonna say I didn't mean to do this, but I put him on the floor like 13 seconds in. We finished the fight. I go back and watch the fight, and I had done that exact combination. I was like, no fucking way. Like that's like, but the thing is too, like in fighting, you are like you're there mentally, but you almost go into autopilot.
Yeah.
Like you just, your training takes over in a sense, and you're doing everything like, it's not like you're fighting out of adrenaline and you don't know what you're doing. You're just fighting like in a way that you're programmed.
Yeah.
And it's like an autopilot. You kind of just sit back and let your body do it.
So does your vision like that? I mean, it sounds like a enhanced flow state almost,
yes,
where you're like
it's flow state.
Like, what are you even seeing? Like, what's your vision? Like when you think about this and like you're visualizing your last fight, like what is it that your brain is reading? Like, what is it that, like in lacrosse, you're like looking at somebody, like if you're playing defense on an attackman, you're looking at their eyes, you're looking at their feet, you're looking at their hips. Like you have like your body, like you said, is trained to know what to look for.
Yeah.
But when you're in a ring where like it's just a different risk reward.
Yeah.
Like the risk of not being on is that you get knocked out. Like that's a much bigger, like I would imagine that your brain like shuts out all of the noise outside of it.
Yeah. During I'd say that when you first start fighting, like specifically your first fight or first couple of fights, your vision is very like tunnel vision, like where, you're just kind of like focusing very like pinhole view, which isn't good. Like you want to kind of have a just open vision. And so to answer your question, like the last fight, like it's, normal. It's like as if I'm talking to you right now. It's just obviously there's more pressure on it because I'm trying to hit you and you're trying to hit me.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of vision, like, and where you're looking, I always look like directly into the guy's eyes. And
that's what you're trained to do, or is that?
I think some guys are different. Like some guys will like look at their shoulders to try to anticipate punching. That's like kind of a myth, I think.
Yeah. I
just always look in their eyes for whatever reason, like, not intentionally. It's just because like what am I gonna look at, like your knee? Like, like I'm fighting you, like I'm gonna stare you in the eyes.
Yeah. It can tell. I mean, I'm sure it can tell you a lot.
But also, also looking in the eyes too can play in your favor. I've been told that, like by sparring partners, that I will, like when I get hit, I have like a very like angry or scary like look. Like my brows will like crunch over, which I thought was funny because you're never like angry at the other guy. Like there is anger that happens like in sparring and sometimes in fights, but mainly in sparring because it's not more of it's less of like an adrenaline moment. But I always just get pissed off at myself like during it. It's almost similar to golf when you miss a shot or something and you're just like, I'm a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
But in fighting, it's just like, yo, why do I keep getting hit? I'm an idiot. Like, what am I doing? And like you get pissed off.
And then you just get hit again.
Yeah. But like in terms of like looking in someone's eyes with like kind of that look, like I said, like some of my sparring partners like, yeah, when you put on this look, it's scary as hell.
Yeah. So that was your first fight in the tournament.
That was my first
after
fight.
a bye. So there's all right. So that's this.
Yes.
That would be the second round.
So yeah, that was my preliminary fight. One unanimous decision, which was sick, and then my next fight was scheduled for 2 weeks later. And it's funny because that weekend I was like, all right, I have 2 weeks. I'm gonna like enjoy myself, eat a bunch of food. Monday, I'm like 175 pounds. I'd eaten so much shit. I'm just bloated. My coach calls me. He's like, hey, like you're fighting this Friday. And my heart sank. I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, what? And he's like, no, not in the tournament. Like it's just another warm-up fight. Like West Point's in town again. Like they're fighting at the Union League Club.
The Eastern Europeans back for you.
I was like, oh, okay. All right. No problem. West Point, like they kind of have a reputation for not being great fighters. So he's like, yeah, it's a warm-up fight. Like just treat it as sparring. You're going to win. And I was like, all right, cool. And that was honestly the weirdest fight too. It was a week after the first one and it just did not feel serious at all. I remember we got to this place. It was at this swanky club in the city called the Union Club. So everyone was there in like tuxes and stuff watching kids fight each other. And that was the first fight of the night, which I hate being the first fight on a fight card because you don't have enough time to hydrate and eat. But I remember it was just so informal. Like I was getting my hands wrapped by my coach. I was like, yo, I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, but like I feel nothing right now. Like, I don't feel nerves or anything. This feels really weird. And he's just like, yeah, me too. I don't know. We'll see. And I remember we were running real late. Like they didn't have their shit together at this place. And because the doctors got in late, which meant like you have to get checked by the doctor before you fight. They got in late and the place had a strict start time. So what happened was I ended up getting I was getting my hands wrapped and a kid on our team gets a call and he's like, oh, okay, I'll let him know right now. And he's like, yo, like so-and-so just called. They're finishing the national anthem right now. Like you guys got to go up right now. And typically we do like a 40-minute warm-up before each fight. So I had my hands finished wrapping. We're like, all right, let's go. Like we hopped in the elevator, walked up. They're finishing the national anthem and just got right into the ring and fought this kid. And it was just like such a weird fight. Like there was just like, it felt so just like stale and just because it wasn't related to the tournament also, I think.
Yeah. There
was like no pressure. I ended up winning like unanimously, beat this kid up. And afterwards we were all just like laughing about it. We were like, that was the weirdest shit ever. This like,
especially to go in cold. What does a warm-up entail? A 40-minute warm-up?
It's like a dynamic warm-up. So it's like a series of like walking, like doing like elbow twists and then like kind of like similar stuff you like a ladder, a lot of shadow boxing. It's just a series of different dynamic movements.
Okay.
And you'll do a number of sets of them and yeah.
Get you warm enough. So after that, so that's just like
so that's the warm-up. That's the warm-up. We got that out of the way and it's just like I said, like my friend and I, we couldn't stop laughing at just how funny the whole thing was. Like that was weird as hell. But it felt badass because it was like, yo, we're in the middle of a tournament and no one else is doing this. It's like, all right, we're having you fight again, like in the middle of this tournament, outside of the tournament, just to stay ready.
Yeah.
Like, but then the next fight, the quarterfinals, was at this pretty cool venue where you had like a big walkout with a massive screen behind you, and fought this kid and beat him unanimously. I had also seen that this kid was looking at my Instagram story, who I was fighting, because like who you're fighting like in the next round, you see on the bracket. And after the first fight that I had USA Boxing and like the tournament Instagram page started following me on Instagram, and I made my account public so they could repost what I was sharing.
Yeah.
Like they would share all the stuff I was putting out there. And once I saw that this kid looked at one of my stories and I took a look at his profile, I was like, yo, I'm way better than this kid. I started putting up videos of past fights of me like beating dudes into the floor with just these messages on them. Like, I don't care who I'm fighting. Like, I've worked way too hard to this. No one's going to take this from me. Like to get in this, like specifically to get in this kid's head.
I didn't realize that's what you were doing.
Yeah. I was like talking to one of my friends about it. I was like, yo, these people probably think I'm just nuts. Like writing this, writing this into nothing, being like, yo, I have done all this. Like I will not lose. And I could tell the kid like was nervous. Like the night I saw him in the changing room, like all the fighters, you get ready in the same room. So you're all together. And I saw him that night and I was like immediately, I would do this for every fight. I would like, you'd weigh in, I would keep my shirt off walking around because it was like ripped up and big at the time. And I'd make sure to like go in front of him and I would do stuff like I'd put my arms out like this in front of the guys to like show them that I had reach too. Just like all these little mental things. And when this kid was getting his hands checked, like after you get your hands wrapped, you have to get them signed off on to make sure there's nothing in them to, tamper or make him hard.
Yeah.
And I made it a point to follow him when he got his hands checked. And I was like standing there right next to him, watching him get his hands checked. And like the lady was like, she's like, oh, this feels like this. I was like, what's going on with his hands? And the kid's just like kind of freaking out. But after that fight, I went up to him like, dude, I give you a lot of like respect. Like he was a little bit younger than me and I had more experience than him. And I was like, I give you a lot of respect and credit, man. Like he went into it just like fully confident and like fought really hard. And I was like, dude, like you can definitely like win this tournament next year if you keep training. I think I just have more experience than you and whatnot. But I ended up becoming like friendly with him, also with the kid I fought the first fight. Like I ended up becoming just boys with every guy that I fought.
Yeah.
Because I would feel that way after the fight. Like I would like genuinely be like, yo, that was like good shit.
Yeah. And you know what they went through.
Yeah, it's just like this like respect. And so after that was the quarterfinals, then moving on to the semifinals was at this place called the Classic Car Club, which is like a members only club on the West Side Highway. It's like a hangar where they just have like a ton of sick cars in there. It looks like a place that like James Bond would go to stalk out his villain, like where his villain would be hanging out. So we go there. I had a number of friends come and my family went. They bought like a table. We had a family friend who was a member there, but it was a closed off event. I remember that fight, I had to cut a ton of water weight because I wasn't on weight. I checked a couple days before, I was like 6 pounds overweight. And so that day I'm just in the sauna with a sauna suit and I dropped 6 pounds.
So what happens if you're overweight in a situation like that?
You have like an hour to get the weight off or else you get disqualified. And that was my biggest fear was not making weight. Because like I said, I walk around at 185, 190 and I was fighting at 165.
Yeah. Right
now I'm 190 and I look like in relatively fine shape. Like imagine just like that much less.
Yeah.
So that was a huge struggle, just staying that low. And that day, because you fight the same day you weigh in. And I was also the first fight on that card, which meant that I would have, out of all the fighters, the least amount of time to hydrate. So like if I were fighting 13th on the card, I'd have all the time between fights 1 and 12 on my side to hydrate and eat. And I remember that afternoon, I was just doing the weight cut. I was walking up the stairs to go to the scale to check my weight for the last time and couldn't make it up the stairs. I had to take a break. It's just like, holy shit, I'm about to go fight a kid who made it to the semifinals. He's going to be good. And I can't even walk up the fucking stairs right now.
Yeah.
And so I start freaking out a little bit, get to the venue, I weigh in, start hydrating, which is like also the best. Like that was my favorite thing ever. It's like after weighing in, because I'd always be so thirsty. I had this concoction that I would drink. It was like a mix of like coconut water and salt and lemon and lime and all this other shit. But it was just like the formula. So I ended up for this fight, the first round, immediately I could feel it in my legs. Like I am so depleted. Just like,
because you like fully fasted at that point with food.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole week leading up to, like, for a water cut, there's a whole process. Like 7 days out, you start drinking 2 gallons of water a day to get your body into the state of like excreting water. Like your body thinks I have this endless supply. So you sweat a ton and you're constantly pissing. And on top of that, you're not eating any carbs because carbs retain water. You're having no sodium. So like your diet is just like egg whites, chicken breast. And that's pretty much all I ate. Yeah. And that wears away at you. When you do it for a week, you're just, you don't feel great.
Yeah.
But then obviously before the fight, you load up on food. But yeah, when the fight had started, I was super nervous because my legs felt just empty. Like I had no power, it felt like. And I was really nervous that if I had gotten hit, that I would hit the ground just because I didn't have anything stabilizing me. And after the first round, I went and sat in my corner, and for all previous fights, when I would sit down, my coach would be like, "How you doing?" I'd be like, good, like good. And wasn't demanding at all. But for this fight, after the first round, I sit down, he's like, "How you doing?" And I was just like, I am fucking I was like fucking shit. I said, just like, he said, "How you doing?" I said, like fucking shit or something. And I was like, ice, like ice on my back, like ice on my chest. I was like, pull my shorts back.
So is the ice just like shock?
No, it cools you down because your body is like overheating. But I never used to ask for any, like I had never asked for any of that in the past because I wasn't in that bad of physical state.
Yeah.
But like after this first round, I'm just really feeling it. And so they have like ice on my back, my chest, they're like shooting water on my head. And my coach has like my shorts pulled back because like, your groin, that's where you hold a lot of heat.
Yeah.
So there was like all this going on. It was like I was like, I need this. We go back into the second round. Like same thing, just kind of holding on, feeling really tired. But I was still landing shots and staying out of the way of this kid. And then going to the third round, I am absolutely dead. And my coach is like, "This kid's getting tired. I can see it. You're tagging him. Like, you gotta put him down right now." And I had this moment where I was thinking, I was like, all right, I've gone through so many like sprints and burpees. Like this feeling that I'm feeling now, I'm used to. Like this is what I trained for, like to be able to like work through this feeling. Went out and like, again, in the third round, similar to the first fight, within 15 seconds or so, I gave this kid like a 6-punch combination and borderline knocked him out. Like I connected on his chin and he fell forward, which is like his lights went out for a second. He didn't like just crumble to the ground, fell forward onto the ground. And I'm thinking, thank God, because I saw how he fell. I was like, they're going to call the fight. He's not going to get up. And I'm thinking, I don't have to keep fighting. I'm so drained. And I won. Let's go. I go to the corner. The kid gets up and then falls again because he had been hit so hard. And I was like, okay, like they're definitely going to call the fight. Like he is out of it. And the ref goes, "Keep going, like fight." It's like, yo, what is going on with this motherfucker? And I'm surprised the kid's coach didn't throw in the towel, because at that point too, I'm like, okay, this kid was just put down in a fashion like that. He's got nothing left in him. So I just need to hit him again like that and he won't get up.
Yeah.
And so for the rest of the round, I was just throwing just straight power punches, like 1 or 2 at a time. And they'd given him like a standing 8 count again. That's where like you really drill a guy and the ref will come in and give you 8 seconds to make sure you're good. They give him like a couple of those. And I'm just looking at my coach, like, why aren't they stopping the fight? People in the crowd are like, stop the fight. This kid was just getting his like ass beat. And like, I felt bad for him too during the fight. I was just like, but like, that's the situation you're in. Like you're trying to win. And at the time, I'm not like, all right, I clearly won the first 2 rounds. So I don't know who's up or who's not. So I'm just trying to win. Eventually the fight ends and, I ended up winning unanimously. And it was like I said, the previous fights, I would talk to the kids afterwards, like in the center of the ring, like, yo, good stuff, blah, blah, blah. This kid, I felt I didn't want to say anything to him because it was like this, he was just in such another place.
Damn.
Like felt terrible for him. And then the finals was at MSG the next week. It was a quick turnaround.
Damn, that's quick.
Yeah.
So the entire time you're like, as I was following along, like the entire journey was based around like this trip to MSG. Mm-hmm. And it's like that to me was the really cool part of like, not only are you doing this, which takes a lot, but like you get to fight in the Mecca. Like that's
the coolest thing about the New York Golden Gloves is that the finals are at Madison Square Garden.
so. What was that like after you won that semifinal? Like, what was your next week like?
I was so pumped up. I was just like, let's go. I did it. At that point I did care, but I was like, I don't care if I win or lose. I don't care if I lose. Like I made it to the finals. I'm like one of the finalists, whatever. But it wasn't true. Like I wanted to win. I was just so excited. And the kid I ended up fighting, it's kind of an interesting story. Like it was the worst fight of all time. This kid who I fought, who beat me, and they gave him he got a split decision win. But the reason I say it was the worst fight of all time was because there was barely any fighting. Like I would throw punches and then he would hold on to me and just like hold me and tie me up. And it was just excessive holding the entire time. And there was no warning at all, like no point deduction, but just at the bare minimum, no warning. Like a ref will usually come and be like, hey, like you're holding, I'll give you one warning, I'll give you another. It's like, okay, now you get a point deducted.
Yeah.
Like back to the whole mouth guard thing, I got points off and that screwed me over. Like points are a huge thing. And kids got DQ'd from the tournament earlier on for excessive holding. But this kid is just holding the entire time and I'm doing most of the offensive in the fight. He caught me once at the end in the third round, but that was really it. And then they ended up giving him the split decision win. I was like, what the fuck was that? And afterwards, I go up to my friends and all of them are like, that was the biggest bullshit ever. And I'm thinking like, all right, they're just saying that because they're my friends. And then I go down to my parents and I'm talking to them and all of a sudden other people in the crowd are coming up to me and like, yo, that was insane. You won that fight. Like that was the biggest robbery of all time. And then later found out that this kid who I fought in his semifinal fight, I watched the fight. He got his ass beat by this guy and they gave it to this kid. And I'm like, who the hell is this kid? And then find out that his dad is the head of the board of USA Boxing Coaches Committee. And this lady's like, yeah, you don't know who his dad is? Like, that's why he got this. Like, his dad's the former Golden Glove champ, like on the board, all this. I was like, oh.
Makes a little bit more sense.
Okay, and the other thing too is like this kid was he was at my semifinal fight where I had put that kid down in that fashion and he didn't want to get hit. Like he was afraid of getting hit. And I talked to the kid too that he fought in the semifinals. I reached out to him. I was like, dude, I saw your fight. Like you definitely won that. And he was like, yeah, like it's BS. You know who his dad is, all this.
Yeah.
He's afraid to get hit. He'll just hold you the whole time. And
so did you ever talk to that kid, the kid that ended up winning?
Not directly. I tried to fight him again afterwards, honestly.
Really?
Like not in the street, but like I was talking to my coach because it was like the plan was the whole time that this was it, this tournament. Like I had no intention to keep competing after it. I just wanted this tournament as just like a side quest and like along.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Just
like,
a little side quest.
I'm not like people are like, yo, so when's your next fight? I'm like, there's no next fight. Like, but I was talking to my coach and like there was an event coming up at NIAC and I was like, I will compete again if it's against this kid. I want a rematch. And my coach like reached out and I guess they declined it. He didn't want it.
Really?
Yeah. But
what a journey. What a like, and so you have no desire to fight again?
no, dude, I don't like the actual fighting of it. I like the idea of winning and like doing something like a tournament where you can like make it to the end of it and beat all these people and do something that's hard. But the actual fighting, I don't like it at all. I hate getting hit. The whole like lead up to fights it's fun, like in a way, it's like a different type of fun, but it's just a lot. It's not something that I would want to do regularly going forward.
Yeah. Especially like you said, like with a full-time job and.
Oh yeah. And like I said, all these kids too, like the kids I'm fighting, the amateurs, they're all trying to go pro. Like they all will go pro. That's their life.
Yeah.
And they're all gung ho about it. And I mentioned to you during the break, but I was like the oldest guy in the tournament.
Yeah.
Like an old man just cleaning up all these youngsters. Just whooping them out. No, but actually like that was the thing. Like I had so many injuries too. Like I have terrible knees, zero cartilage in my knees.
Really?
which made the training really tough for the running. And just like the injuries alone that you get from it, it's like you get beat down.
Yeah. So what did you after that entire? Because that's a wild ride, like a 4-year essentially taking a hiatus.
Yeah.
From competing, getting back in the ring. What did you learn about yourself in this last run? Like what do you like when you reflect back in like 10 years? Like what will your first thoughts be about? Like I would assume you're glad you did it.
Yeah.
You know, but what did you like take away from it more than anything?
Like I knew this about myself previously, but I think this really solidified it that like when I want to be, I can be very disciplined and committed, and will like not just talk the talk but walk the walk, and really like go after it. And the fact that it's not like it was just a 1 or 2 month or 3 month endeavor. It was over the course of an entire year of very regimented training and strict eating. And I'll think about it all the time, just, staying on that type of training and mindset too. It's like, you're not only physically tired, but mentally, always having to like maintain that mindset of fighting. Like you have a fight in a week, you have a fight in 2 weeks. You have to stay in this specific mindset to be ready and prepared, and it wears away at you.
Yeah.
Like you're going to the office every day and you're like, I'm about to go fight this dude in 2-3 days.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, what I learned, like I said, just can stay disciplined and go after something and can get it done.
Yeah. Cause I was going to say is like this, obviously, the whole goal of this podcast is to talk about mental health, and we didn't really talk about it much at all, but that's cause the story is, like I said, I was hanging on the edge of my seat of like what this journey did for you, but like, how was your mental health throughout that process, and how is it after, especially once you kind of like take that thing, like you're saying, like, this is a thing that you were able to hold on to for a while, and then once it goes away, like what's that like?
It's a pretty interesting point. Like throughout it, I felt great, and I think part of that was due to the fact that I was working out all the time, and obviously when you work out, you get endorphin release, whatever. I was in shape, aside from the fact of being hungry all the time, that you eventually get used to that, but I just felt like I was on a mission, and I felt just very alive, and it was so cool. Like I loved the idea of just like getting better, like getting better cardio and stronger. I would think about the tournament every single day. Like I think about winning. I think about Madison Square Garden, like making it there every single day, and trying to visualize like what my coach's expression, like winning. And it would just fire me up every single day. I was in such like a flow of just so much momentum. It was awesome. And then after the tournament, I kind of hit a lull that I'm just getting out of now, but, I had stopped working out for quite a bit, like a month or two. I started just eating like shit, which I was gonna like that. I had to do. I was like, I'm just going to go through it. But what's crazy is I gained the weight back so fast.
Really?
From 165 to, like I said, I'm 190 now. But eating, like I was eating everything in sight and just the worst foods for like 3 weeks straight, and hit a point where I was like, all right, I've got like a gut now. Like when I look in the mirror, I don't see the same face, because my face was just, like I said, low body fat. You've got that kind of like fighter chisel cut up look. And I was like, yo, I look like, I don't reckon, it was weird because it happened so fast. And then on top of just not working out, like you're not getting those endorphins anymore. I was in a bit of a lull.
Yeah.
And so in terms of mental health, like it wasn't doing so hot for a little bit. Yeah. But now I've started to, work out quite a bit again, not obviously to that extent, but I've been working out, and I still eat healthy though. Like I gave, like, one thing I realized is like what you put in your body, it will affect how you feel. And just from the 3 weeks of eating, donuts and chicken cutlets and all that doesn't make you feel great. Yeah.
That's one thing I would assume, that you get really in touch with your body.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
Like the pain, like the pains of it, what makes it feel good, what makes it feel bad.
Yeah.
And as I think about the broader, mental health, and specifically men's mental health problems, like to me, so much of it, like I guess before I inject my own opinion, but like, why do you think that men have the problems that they have today? Like, why do you think that this is a thing? That, the one stat that always shocks everybody of like 4 out of 5 people who die by suicide are male. Like,
Is
what
that
do you
right?
think? Yeah.
Holy shit.
It's crazy.
I know that.
It's terrible. Yeah. And it's like, what is it? What is it that we're not talking about? What is it that we're not doing? What is it that, like, from your perspective?
I have no idea, honestly. I mean, I feel like maybe some men aren't as willing to like go to therapy, maybe.
Yeah.
I know that's a thing. Like some guys are just like, I don't need to go to therapy, but therapy is great. Like everyone should see a therapist, whether you have like a huge problem or problems or not.
Yeah.
Just having someone to speak to about whatever, I think is important.
Yeah. Have you gone through that process?
Yeah, I have a therapist.
Really?
He was at my fight.
Really? No way.
Yeah, bro, everyone was at, dude, I had like every bodega guy on my block there, like my barber.
That's so funny. So wait, tell me about your process getting into therapy or going through it. Because I don't even know if we've had too many guys on here who like actively see therapists.
So like I said, when I was growing up younger, I was a little troubled and going through all that stuff. So I started seeing a therapist as early as 10 years old.
Really?
Yeah, and I was a bit of like I said, an annoying kind of crazy kid. It was actually when I was a lot like 6 years old, I was diagnosed with ODD, which is oppositional defiancy disorder. And it's essentially just like you don't want to follow the rules of like authority.
Yeah.
So you're like just like a certified piece of shit little kid.
You're just getting into
I'm serious. Like you'll just like revolt against any. So I always had trouble like following the rules in school or listening to my parents, and so I think that was part of it. Why my mom got me into therapy or just seeing psychologists. But I remember from the time of like 7 to 18, I had seen like 10. My mom had taken me like 10 different guys.
Really?
Because I'd always end up arguing with them. I feel like I'm not coming back here. Like I don't like you.
That's funny.
But I like to think that I grew out of that. When you're a young kid, like you've got all these, I feel like just adolescent issues.
Yeah. So what was it like? What do you think? Now looking back at your child self, like as an adult, like what do you think was? Do you think that you were trying to cope with something? Do you think that you were just like trying to think, like, I don't know. Cause when I think back to, my own personal experiences, it's just like the weight of the world. It feels like it's so scary. And like, I feel like I was like awake to the grandiosity. I don't even know if that's the right way to say it, but like of the world, I was like aware of that at a young age. And it's like, it fascinates me when kids have these issues at a young age. Cause like in a way, and this is the way that I tell myself this to feel better, but like there's something special about those kids. Like you have to be smart to be funny and to be able to like to go back at authority like that. Like Aiden, point number one, like when he was younger, and I hope he won't mind me like saying this, but like he was smarter than the teachers, and he was getting in trouble, but there's like that it factor that he had. And I wonder, in your life, like what that was like growing up.
I have no idea why I acted the way I did when I was younger. A large part of it, I think, was going back to the whole like attention and entertaining thing. Like I always loved to make my friends laugh and do crazy things.
Yeah.
I was just very wild. And I don't know like what the reason was. Like I don't know if it was related to how I was raised.
Yeah.
Like my parents were great parents. Like I think it was some people are just born with that type of mindset. I don't know.
Yeah. Almost like extra energy.
Yes. Yeah, definitely like extra energy.
Like, cause when you said that, there's a couple kids that pop into my head where I was like, oh, I knew that kid. Like the younger brother that was running around and that was always getting into it.
Like I was the kid in our town, like where moms would be like, you don't want, like, you're not hanging out with that McNulty boy. Yeah.
Hugh's such a great name for a troublemaker too.
Dude, I was a menace. Yeah. I remember I was in like first grade or something. We were out during recess and I just left and walked home. Left the school.
I'm out.
And I showed up, my mom freaks out. She's like, what are you doing here? I was like, I just came home. Like,
I didn't want to be there.
Yeah, I'm not going back. But that was the whole thing, like getting me to go to school. I'm not kidding, dude. Like, I didn't want to go. Like, I'd be like, I don't need to be here right now. I'm
Yeah.
like 7 years old.
Yeah. And it's so funny to me. Like that kind of, I don't know. Kids are brilliant. I think that's one of the things that for whatever reason, all of this makes me so fascinated by like the childhood experience, because there's so much going on in your head at that time where it's like, again, between the extra energy, between the attention, like, or just fucking with authority. Like it's just sometimes like I'm still struggling with authority at 28 years old. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want a fucking boss.
Yeah.
And that's why, we'll save that for another episode. But
Yeah.
but dude, we have so much more that we could be talking about, but let's grab a cheesesteak. And we'll talk about all those other topics some other time. But dude, thank you so much for coming here and doing this. And what a wild path and story. And glad you came to share it with us. So
Thank you for having me on.
Dude, you're the man. All right, let's rock.